So, as you may have or may not have seen, recently we got an announcement of new restricted schools that we will be having in Senjutsu. And if, in case you haven't seen them, these are the new restricted schools. The first one is Calm Composure, Diagonal / Quickstab. Second one is Duty, Severing Cut, and Horizontal Cut. Third one is Dash Down Strike, Wild Swing, and River Block. And the fourth one is Splitting Strike, Rolling Slash, and Forest. This means that we have all the same restricted cards as before, on top of Forest Step, Duty, and River Block also getting added on top of them, which... Personally, big advocate, was one of the bigger people pushing specifically for Forest Step and River Block, but of course I will get to analysis of this once we get. I wanted to make a reaction, observation, analysis, whatever you want to call it, to these and kind of talk a little about how I feel these might affect the meta, where I think they might be used, so on and so forth. You get the idea, you've seen these videos. Also, I want to say, sorry if my thoughts are a bit more all over the place. I'm doing this unscripted because I'm trying to get this video out a bit faster in a more timely manner because the restricted schools are still a bit new. So despite the fact that I have some bullet points on the side, it's probably not going to be the most coherent video I've ever made. But either way, so the first restricted school we have is 1 Calm Composure, 2 Diagonal Slash, and 3 Quickstab. This is, well, the first one that I looked at in terms of, oh, I think this one is going to be the most used one, because it's very clear that it's really fucking strong. So it's a very strong offensive school, but... we have to look at these cards in a bit of a different sense. So previously, if you had these 3 as restricted school, it would be played almost 100% of the time. Because Calm Composure is an insanely strong card just no matter what. Diagonal Slash is one of the strongest attacks that we have in the game, and Quickstab is also one of the strongest attacks that we have in the game. But this time, we have to understand that these will no longer be able to use Forest Step or River Block, so its ability to set up both free Diagonal Slashes and up close green Quickstabs is going to be a bit hindered. Now, this restricted school, I would still say, is really strong. It's the only one of the new ones that uses exclusively cards from the old restricted schools. And interestingly enough, it has a lot of the same strengths that Jade River used to have. Particularly because it still has Calm Composure and Diagonal Slash, and Quickstab a lot of the times can serve a lot of the same purposes that Horizontal Cut could, except for the fact that it costs focus and doesn't pivot, which honestly makes this a lot more bearable to deal with as a restricted school compared to Jade River. Like, it's much easier to block Quickstab than Horizontal Cut in green. It's a lot easier to also land a Quickstab than Horizontal Cut, but the point of the matter is that you're not going to be struggling on defensive maneuvers, you're just going to be like struggling on positioning advantage, which Diagonal Slash already makes very hard. So I'm fine with these two being in the same restricted school because they create a very strong positional offense that green can do, which I think green already should be doing, green has been doing, so on and so forth. You're going to be relying on getting up close with your non-restricted cards, and then from there, Diagonal Slash is going to be covering your right angles, Quickstab is going to be covering the short cone in front of you, and if you're playing in red, it's going to be covering also the range 1 in front of you. Calm Composure, I really like keeping with 2 more aggressive cards, because I feel like putting Calm Composure with some of the more defensive cards can really make for game plans that are just too passive. Putting Calm Composure also in the same restricted school with, for example, River Block would make it the prime restricted school for building focus. So I'm glad that Calm Composure is like basically the only one that is used for building focus in its restricted school, aside from specifically Quickstab and Yellow, and that one won't be getting applied as much. So for this one, I think that it will be getting used. Characters that need Calm Composure are firstly definitely going to be using this. Characters that like need a lot more focus than they can get and can still like Diagonal Slash and Quickstab. Examples of characters that I think might still be able to use this are Warrior. Of course, I think Musashi is still going to make some use of this because Diagonal Slash and Quickstab are just really good for him, even if he doesn't really need Calm Composure. Kojiro as well doesn't really need Calm Composure, but Diagonal Slash and Quickstab are both really good. Two interesting characters that I want to see with this are Yasuke and Sailor, because they both can farm focus fairly quickly, but also both like getting a lot of card advantage, and both play in yellow and green fairly effectively, so they will be able to make good use out of the yellow and green diagonal slash and yellow and green quick stab for some pretty good spatial control. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. However, I'm not sure if out of the new schools these are going to be the ones that these characters particularly going to be playing, but I'm just looking at the short-range characters for what they are. The second one... Okay. The second restricted school includes 2 horizontal cut, 2 severing cut, and 1 duty. I will be honest, I am kind of on the fence with this one. So I would say that severing cut is probably the worst of the old restricted school cards. Not to say that it's bad. A bleed on a rotation and potential pivot, and the fact that it can be 2 wounds in red is a pretty strong attack. But when it's competing with a lot of the hardest to block attacks in the game, and a lot of the hardest to block plus highest damage dealing attacks in the game, like compare this to like dash down, strike, and diagonal slash, and it starts to feel like it's among the worst 2 damage cards. But that's just my cup of tea. But also, I am also of the opinion that duty is probably the worst of the 3 newly added restricted cards, or at the very least most situational, because Forest Step and River Block particularly were added because it really feels like if you can throw them out, you don't really have a bad time. Duty is definitely a card that is more so on the you really need to be picking a character that wants it side. But I feel like these still will definitely find their home, and particularly I feel like these can make for an interesting bleed lineup, because duty is, even right now, used in bleed strategies to shuffle field bandages that's prepared back into the deck as soon as you land a bleed attack. Severing Cut is also already used in the bleed strategies because it's the only restricted school card that can apply bleed, and Horizontal Cut isn't used because you need to play Severing Cut, but I can see it being used because it's a speed 6, both back step and forward step. It switches you into green if you're in red, and if you're playing Assassin, you're already probably gonna be in green or red, so you get benefits from both of these. All I will say is that I don't see too much direct power. These cards individually, I don't think are among the better ones that you can be running in your deck, but I do believe that these will still see their play. Horizontal Cut at least will definitely see its play in some pivot builds, and if the deck is writing itself in yellow and green, for example, if you're playing for a more aggressive version of Sailor or Monk, you might get some use out of the pivots that both Severing Cut in yellow and Horizontal Cut in green get to give you. And these 2 characters particularly also don't mind putting bleeds on you. So in short, I don't have as many opinions on this one. I feel it's weird, but I can still see it finding its home. Unlike the rest, I can't envision yet a deck where I feel these will be good that isn't exactly a bleed deck with Assassin. But if it's the best for that, which we're gonna look at the last one, I think that one might still have some potential for strategies that are focusing on bleed, but this one still really nice. I like it. So the third new restricted school is Dash Down Strike, Wild Swing, and River Block. I really like this one. Not for like, oh, I think this one is going to be played an insane amount, which I still think it will, but I like the game plan that this creates. So Dash Down Strike and River Block are just both really strong cards when it comes to trying to get in and deal a bunch of damage and keep getting advantage no matter what is happening. Dash Down Strike is just one of my favorite cards in this game because it focuses on aggression, but it never feels like you get to be too aggressive with it, and especially because it's a gold card instead of a steel or wood card, it doesn't feel like it's going to shift your game plan as much, as opposed to just being a good tool for basically every game plan because it basically does everything. If you like being in red at range 1, it's going to be a great 2 wound attack from there. If you like being in green at range 0, you know it's going to be a great pivot for you. It's always going to be drawing cards, and particularly with River Block, I feel like it's going to create an interesting character archetype because exactly the fact that you can't run Horizontal Cut. Before, River Block used to be accompanied by the pivot of Horizontal Cut, which made it extremely obnoxious because you would be able to River Block to make sure that you come up safely, and then Horizontal Cut as your pivot, which is insanely fast, so it'll be going before a lot of the blocks, and it pivots, so it'll be going around a lot of other blocks. Dash Down Strike, on the other hand, speed 6 if you're pivoting, so it's pretty manageable. Speed 7 at range 1, if you're getting hit by that, I don't know what to tell you. You just need to be thinking about your life choices at that point. And the fact that it's accompanied all by Wild Swing, it shifts River Block particularly, which I think is the most obnoxious out of these, surprisingly enough. It shifts River Block from being the card that you always run because you make sure that it's going to give you focus no matter how much you build it, and it's putting it with these two very focus-eating cards, and making sure that if River Block is your only source of focus gain, you won't be getting as much use of it in the easiest to use cards, or that you're just going to be able to use them for your signature cards willy-nilly how you were able to use it before. It's definitely a more green-oriented restricted school, much like most of them, because just how it is, genuinely, green's gotta be the best Kama to be in and to be able to build a deck around no matter what, and I'm just glad that it's being split through restricted schools at least. But overall, I like that this gives you more of a sense of aggression without pivots, wherein you're able to get close with River Block and either threaten a pivot with Dash Down Strike one time. You still have Pummel Smash, to be fair, but if you are attempting to block Dash Down Strike, you're also attempting to block Pummel Smash. Or you decide to split over the opponent's speed with Wild Swing at speed 7, which is still pretty fine and a pretty hefty cost to pay in the case you get blocked. Overall, I just like that River Block is in a restricted school now at the very least, and you're gonna be hearing even more of that for the next one. I can see this one getting used for characters like to get up close and deal a bunch of damage, or characters that just need their blind spots patched up, like how I was using Wild Swing on Ronin to make sure that you still have some up close play safing that's still going to be used, especially with Dash Down Strike because it's still a range 1 gap closer. I think that Kojiro might really like this one, despite the fact that it's still a heavily green Kamae and shifts you to green a lot. I mean, Kojiro likes to get forced into green here and there, and you will also be able to make good use of the additional effects that you get in red from Dash Down Strike. And of course, Kojiro doesn't really care about losing focus or losing cards. You will just get them back. You can Wild Swing with Kojiro. Other than that, of course, Musashi, Master, Student, like, they can still run basically whatever restricted school they want. Anything that gives them aggression is good for them. It will make them more of a safe game plan. I think Master, out of all of these at least, will get the most use because he gets to have reposition, has a really good signature card to close in, which is the biggest thing that this restricted school is lacking. Wherein Musashi still gets to have a lot of the benefits that this gives even without the restricted school, though it giving him River Block, still really nice for him. And outside of that, overall just a pretty nice all-arounder restricted school that even if a game plan isn't oriented around it, I feel like this is always going to be a pretty safe bet. If you like to be up close, if you like to be aggressive, and you really aren't trying to cover up your blind spots with Diagonal Slash, because otherwise that might be a bit of a better, just all-arounder close-up one. Because I don't believe that the Duty one will be as useful for all characters, because still the fact that Duty is a double-sided effect is more risky than the Dash Down Strike Gold. So, for the last one, the last restricted school, 1 Splitting Strike, 2 Rolling Slash, 2 Forest Step. all I will say is Diagonal Assassin still lives. God, I am... Oof. Diagonal Assassin is eating so good with this restricted school. So I love this, even if we exclude the fact that it specifically helps the character that I like playing, because I think that the biggest problem with Forest Step is that, well, was that you could constantly abuse it with the best up-close cards that we had in the game, particularly Horizontal Cut, Diagonal Slash, Pommel Smash, and of course, Pommel Smash is still staying in there. Perfectly fair card. I am not going to complain about Pommel Smash. But the fact that you can't run it with Horizontal Cut, you can't run it with Diagonal Slash, can't even run it with Quick Stab anymore. The only shenanigan that you have with it now is just pivoting into Rolling Slash or Splitting Strike if you want to be dealing 2 wounds. Unless you're going for some character-specific thing, but, you know, I can't really talk about that. Musashi is still going to be using this for whatever he wants. He's gonna be dancing over his Fire Slash however you spin it, as long as Forest Step is in the game. But the fact that Forest Step is paired up with 2 long-range cards turns Forest Step less so into the setup for the remainder of the Restricted School, and more the rest of the Restricted School becomes set up for Forest Step. And I really like that. I love that. I think that's great. I think the fact that Forest Step is now being treated as the thing you're scared of is good. Because legitimately, I thought that the biggest problem with Forest Step was that is that it could literally set up anything. So you would always have to fear whatever Restricted School card the opponent had if they were using Forest Step. Any non-restricted school card, any character card, if you weren't exactly using a meditation that goes after 2, so exactly deep meditation, or I guess if you're hobbled, trained mind, sure. But if you weren't going for any of those, or weren't just blind coring and hoping that the opponent isn't going to instant replace into an attack, you were just kind of getting hit if Forest Step managed to resolve. There were caveats, there were counters, there were this, that, but Forest Step was just the freest play and the freest setup that you could get. Still is able to set up every other card in your deck most of the times, but I like the fact that it's not setting up Diagonal Slash at the very least. And the setup that you have to do to set up Rolling Slash with it is really not as rewarding. It's still... Okay, I of course have to acknowledge the fact that Rolling Slash is still technically pivot at 6 if you are in green, which is a lot of caveats to put, and I think that's exactly the point. This Restricted School becomes very accurate at landing its moves if you are in green, exactly. But as we have established, all the Restricted Schools probably play around green. The point I just want to make with this one is that it's going to really help give close-in options to characters while also giving them mix-up options, while not letting those same close-in options or the results of those mix-up options be the most problematic thing in the world. Because you're still just blocking 6 from afar, you were always doing that, lunging thrust was always a thing, splitting strike was always a thing, you were always blocking at 6 if you're far away and you're unsafe and expecting the opponent to approach. Forest Step is just not going to be making those as easily, and the fact that Forest Step can no longer set up into a speed 8 move is... I'm so thankful we're ignoring the fact that character exclusive cards exist. As for the uses for this Restricted School, I think, well, firstly I have to acknowledge, Student is gonna love this Restricted School. The fact that now Student gets to have 3 close-in attacks on top of also having 5 Forest Step adjacent attacks is going to make Student so much stronger than he was before. I am just saying this flat out, putting it out there. It is going to happen. If I'm proven wrong, I won't be. Next up, Assassin, Ninja, Ronin. Probably every long-range character in the game is going to like this because it's the long-range Kame. Particularly, I want to point out Onabu Geisha, because Onabu Geisha already loved the fact that Forest Step lets her set up her weird angles. So really happy for her. She's going to be thriving a bit more than she already was, because let's be honest, a Geisha can't thrive that much. Ninja, I still think, is going to be one of the people using this one, because again, close in, get out, forest step, things that Ninja likes, though Ninja is always on the fence of what restricted school you want to run, because very unorthodox playstyle, all that. And I guess at the end I may as well mention Warrior and Yojimbo, because I'll be honest, they're kind of left in a weird limbo here. These two characters already have very unorthodox playstyles with weird, sometimes they want to be a range one, sometimes they want to be melee. Yojimbo clearly being better at it than Warrior, sorry, Tass. It's just how it is. And Wako has, of course, also always been the odd one out, with possibly the Calm Composure Quickstab one being his new preferred one, because Quickstab is already a lot of the times in a mandatory movement, and if you're for some reason sitting in yellow, it literally has no movement. I know that Diagonal Slash is not the best card on Wako, because the mandatory backstep kind of messes you up in most angles, but hey, it happens. You know, you sometimes you just gotta live with not running one of your restricted school cards, and honestly, I think that is what's going to be happening a lot. And I will be honest, I think that's a good thing. I think the biggest problem with Jade River, I'm now going to be talking specifically about Jade River as the former restricted school. For those that don't know, the former restricted school of Jade River was Calm Composure, Diagonal Slash, and Horizontal Cut. I think the biggest problem with it is that it made a very clear playstyle much stronger if you include all of the cards, and that playstyle already, because you could run it with Forest Step and River Block, was already by the generic cards made one of the best playstyles in the game, because it was extremely safe, got a lot of advantage, and went with the best characters of the game, particularly Musashi and Master. And even as Neon has proven through many tournament runs, Yasuke, because Yasuke can just use River Block and Forest Step and just sit in green after getting all three focus, and just doesn't have to care about it. And so I think that this splitting of playstyles, where not all of the cards in a particular school clearly lead into one goal, where not all of their cards in a particular restricted school are going to be serving the same purpose, making you play the same game, I think it's good. I think it's nice. I think that it's going to make players make a lot more choices, and I think we're going to be seeing a lot more builds of characters where we're going to have multiple builds depending on what school is being played. Because now that the standard builds with the current restricted schools have been torn apart, we're going to be trying to reassemble the best builds that we used to have with the pieces that we can get from the current restricted schools. Not sure if what I'm saying is the easiest to understand, but what I'm trying to say is that we're probably going to be having a lot more School 1 Musashi, School 3 Musashi, rather than just saying, oh, it's Musashi, of course you run Jade River. So overall, I am extremely happy with these new restricted schools. I am looking forward to playing with them so much. I am going to play so much Senjutsu this weekend, you will not be able to believe it. And at the end, all I have to say is, again, same thing that I've been saying at the end of all of my videos. Join the Senjutsu Discord server, play the game. If you want to see some deck profiles that are right now outdated, go to my channel. I'll probably make some not outdated ones soon. God, I'm going to have Mark all of my videos as outdated now, huh? Well, okay, see ya then.